Today, I interview one of the smartest entrepreneurs I know. I've known him for almost 40 years, and he's been a great entrepreneurial example to me for decades. He discusses his latest business venture, and you'll hear some nuggets of advice from someone who is a true natural entrepreneur. Watch for tips on how to notice trends and opportunities that can help ignite more growth into your business.
Are you looking for new ways to make your sales grow? You've tried other podcasts, but they don't seem to know. Harvest the growth potential of your product or service as we share stories and strategies that'll make your competitors nervous. Now, here's the host of the Harvest Growth Podcast, John LeClaire.
Welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to be speaking with my good friend and client now after so many years, Dave Brown. Typically I like to let them introduce themselves, our guests, as they join the show. I'm going to do a little bit more intro this time just because Dave and I go back so many years. I don't want to say how many years it's been, but I think we probably became friends when I was certainly a teenager in high school. And we spent some years together in high school back in Westlake, Ohio. And since then, our careers and family lives have taken us into opposite corners, not opposite, I guess, but far corners of the country. I'm in Colorado, Dave's in Oregon, but we've kept in touch and have had the chance to work on a really fun project together that I'm going to share with you guys, our listeners, today. And we'll talk about some great learnings. Dave is the consummate entrepreneur, and he's really, I got to credit Dave for getting me into entrepreneurship. I'm so grateful for the time we spent, frankly, learning from Dave back in the day before I did all my schooling and everything else. And eventually I ended up as an entrepreneur, but Dave has been one since day one, frankly. So welcome to the show. First of all, Dave, I really appreciate you joining today.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
So I want to talk a little bit about the story. My earliest memory of entrepreneurship is probably, maybe your 10th. I think ever since I've known you, you've always been an entrepreneur, always like kind of doing businesses on the side. But the first one that we ever did together wasn't really a business, but it was a money-making opportunity. We did a car wash, went to a gas station. I think you're the one that set it up. Me, you, and another buddy went there together, washed cars, and had people pay us directly. Different than my, jobs that were W-2s that I worked at Subway, the typical high school jobs, whatever. But this was my first taste of entrepreneurship. So I really, like I said, credit it to you. And I think, did you ever do sidewalk number painting as well? I think you might have got me into that as well.
We did that. Yes. That was a good moneymaker too. I enjoy doing that. You kind of work when you want, and spray paint was cheap back in the day. And, I wonder if they watched us buying spray paint as teenagers, wondering what they thought we were doing with it. But yeah, no, that was spray paint sidewalks. We spray paint their address numbers on there and ask for cash donations. And, I think minimum wage back then was, I don't know, was it $3.35 an hour or something?
I think so.
We're starting to date ourselves a little. But, I think I remember working those jobs and thinking, boy, it'd be nice. On a weekend I could make pretty good money if I would just go out there and just kind of apply ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So fast forward from there a little bit. As I mentioned, I've been doing this for 20 plus years as an entrepreneur, but it took me a little while, right? I got kind of the day jobs and schooling and everything that got me there, but you've been on this journey, frankly, even longer than me. Can you talk about after spray painting sidewalk numbers, right? So for those that don't know our inside story on this, it was the address, right? You just painted on the curb in Ohio, and actually it was great to see. I hate going to my homes in Colorado now. I can never see the numbers on the houses, and I kind of wish we had that same thing here. But I don't think our HOAs allow it, unfortunately. But since then, you started call them real businesses, right? So you've grown your businesses quite a bit. You're no longer doing spray painting of curbs or washing cars at gas stations around the corner. And we'll talk about the current business you have. But before that, talk to us about your journey of entrepreneurship after high school. So what did you do first as your first business?
I got some skills and training working for some different outfits as a glazer. And so I was doing automotive glass. I was doing residential glass, a little bit of commercial glass. And I got thinking about glass. Glass is great. Glass breaks. You need glass in a good economy. You need glass in a bad economy. I felt like it was kind of stable. And I don't know, it was something about it. I liked working with it. And so got some training there. And again, the entrepreneurial kind of spirit I had kind of kicked in. And I said, well, okay, I'm good at this now. And let's see if I can make a go of it. So, I just started, grassroots, right? I just started knocking on doors and I started picking up clients and worked on it in my spare time. And then eventually I felt like I I could maybe make a go of it. And I jumped into it with both feet, and I was young and broke, and not super afraid. And but sometimes I look back and wonder how we made it, but we developed a good business. And like I said, we just, but primarily very grassroots, knocking doors and talking to customers, and then just trying to do a good job for them, and then offering some services others didn't. There wasn't a lot of after-hour services available for in the glass industry, so we would offer that. And we were servicing commercial trucks as well, their glass needs. And a lot of times those trucks run during the day, but they come in at night for service. And so we'd come in the evenings and be able to pick up some clients that way. And so I had fun with that. And then obviously the residential glass as well. If you made yourself available, and glass doesn't always break at convenient times for people, right? And so, we would just kind of offer extra service there. So.
And from there, I know you added on. I wouldn't say transition, because I think these businesses overlapped for a while. So if I remember the story right, it was back in 1999, you started adding in railing. So commercial, I think originally, maybe residential eventually, into that business. How did you combine those two?
We supplied, occasionally we're supplying some glass panel to railing systems. And I thought this glass railing was really neat. And so a few salesmen, came to me and said, "Hey, you guys are already doing glass. Why don't you do the railing part of it too?" And so they got us kind of in, a few guys that came to us and so showed us different products. And then we started selling this stuff, incorporating into our glass business. We started selling glass railing, aluminum railing with glass panels. And so it was great. And we were trying to sell as much glass as possible. So, automotive glass, truck glass, residential glass, commercial. Oh, here's railing. We'll put glass panels in that. So that worked out well. And, the glass was, it's a great windbreak. Especially if you live like in, coastal regions or just high wind areas. It's very modern looking too. So some houses just really look nice with it. So we kind of got into it. And then later on, we kind of started developing some of our own products. And, we ended up selling the glass company and to focus more on railing.
And now, so you've been doing railing a long time, so 25 plus years. And currently, I think the biggest seller is the aluminum side. I think you've done a lot of custom work over the years with a lot of different types of railings, but we're going to dive into a little bit Ridgeview Railing, which is a DIY version of aluminum railing that you can install yourself, even if you're not as handy. So Dave's very handy. I'm not, but I've been through the install process with Dave, and it's something, frankly, even I could do with instruction, with help and kind of guidance. If you're the least bit handy, it's a straightforward way to install railing. So let's talk about, again, before we dive into the Ridgeview side, I want to understand a little bit more about the custom business, because it really drove why Ridgeview Railing is so effective, so good, so affordable, and so great looking. So there's so many positive qualities that came to your product that is now DIY that I think a lot of them or these ideas were born in the custom side, the commercial side of selling to homes and to businesses over the years, because you kind of learned what people want, you learned what they don't, you learned how to make it, as good as it possibly could be. And you've been, as a company, installing these for so many years. You learned how to make it, again, straightforward or relatively easy to install. So on the custom side of the business, who have been your customers? So I kind of talked high level, it's commercial and maybe high-end residential, or, can you talk a little bit more about on the custom side of your business, who have been your customers?
So on that side, for example, condominiums, a lot of times condominiums are built by, the cheapest guy out there. And so 10 or 12 or 15 years, sometimes these guys need an extensive remodel on the exterior. So a lot of times, so those type of customers would come to us and say, "Hey, we want to do something like this, and this is kind of the new design. Can you help us out?" And so we were able to, basically with their design team, we were able to come up with, they had some criteria they wanted, and so we were able to develop some rail systems that met their needs. Architects as well on new buildings, they like to draw stuff that's kind of new and sexy, and not just cookie cutter stuff. And sometimes it'll involve glass, sometimes it'll involve stainless steel cable. vertical pickets even. And so the same thing is we weren't afraid to, you said, hey, that's your design. We can build this. And so we kind of cut our teeth, trying to help the customer with exactly what they wanted. And so the neat thing about that is there's all kinds of different rails we installed over the years. And then we could say, okay, what was great, what was nice, what was difficult, what was fun. And then kind of condense that down to something that's, that we can offer to the general public and help them as well. And hopefully make it affordable.
Absolutely. So what have you learned over the years and all this custom work, if you could drill it down at least a high level, what makes design of railings look great, right? So what are some tips maybe for our audience that might be visiting your website or looking into doing DIY? What kind of design tips do you have?
Well, it's an interesting thing to look at is if you think about your deck, do people actually see your deck? The people on it see your deck. You see your deck, but from the street, sometimes your deck's not very visible, but your railing is very visible. So from a design standpoint, people put a lot of effort and a lot of money into their deck. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, but that is really, that benefits you. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, for street appeal and curb appeal from a distance, the railing is what people notice first. And his question is do you have a classic house and you want a very traditional railing look, maybe with balusters and the railing that goes in between the posts and the posts stand a little bit prouder? Or do you want more of a modern look where the railing will continue over the top of the post and you've got maybe a glass infill or a stainless steel horizontal cable infill, or maybe even some perforated aluminum panels with a design. So that's the one thing about it is what are you looking for? Are you looking for, something modern? Are you looking for something very classic, something unique? Our system, we can incorporate those things, different kinds of infill. When I say infill, it's kind of what's between the post and what's between the top rail and the bottom rail of your rail system. So we've got, a lot of expertise in that, by just cutting our teeth over the years and helping people with their projects. But that's one thing I'd look at people is that decking is expensive. Decks are very expensive, but your railing is really what people see.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a bit more about the product itself, the DIY Ridgeview Railing product. It's more affordable than you'd think. It's especially as you compare it to the cost of putting in a brand new deck. It's the cost is not. It's really doable for most. It doesn't have to be a super premium high end where a custom railing might. So let's talk about the inflection point. You kind of mentioned in your past businesses there, you noticed some opportunities, right? That helped you to grow, like with your glass business, realizing that other competitors didn't work after hours. So hey, there's a big opportunity here. So it was kind of an inflection point to offer that as a service or a time availability in that business. What was the inflection point, would you say, that when you decided to launch this DIY railing business alongside your custom business?
Well, what we noticed with the people that sold railing and, installed railing is they had 20 other products they sold installed as well. There could have been railing, decking, fencing, windows, siding, things like that. And we thought, there's very few just railing experts where that's all they deal with. And we thought, well, let's be a railing expert. Let's focus on railing. The nice thing about that, though, is some of those customers, for example, what I don't want to do is I want people to buy my railing, and maybe it's another contractor that wants to buy my railing, but if I'm competing against him in decking and fencing, he might say, well, I can't buy railing from those guys. So by just specifying in railing, we didn't offend as many people, and we picked up more potential customers, I believe. And then we became just really focused on that. And we could say, wow, this is a great railing product. This is not a great railing product. And we could offer things to our customers, I think, that would just give them better value. And the other thing is we worked hard at controlling the price point, right? We want to make this where you don't have to be a millionaire to afford our railing. That just kind of defeats the purpose. We want people to be able to afford the railing. They're just, average 9 to 5 people that need a safety rail around their deck.
And if you go to the website, Ridgeview Railing, to any of our listeners or viewers, you can price out, you can see, look at the number of kits and accessories that you might need for your business. But if you ever need advice or help, there's a chat on there that questions can be answered. You can also reach out via phone and talk to some of the experts within Ridgeview Railing to answer questions on your specific design needs, to find out how many pieces you might need, or maybe color selection, or just general advice. As you can see, Dave knows this business really well, as does his team. They are specialists and experts in this field, so you can get a lot of those questions answered. If we talk more about Ridgeview Railing specifically, Dave, one of the great things I love about it is it's mostly domestically sourced, which it's surprising, frankly, because your costs are lower than a lot of the competition. Quality is better, I think, than anything I've seen out there, certainly, and definitely better than most, if not, as certainly as good as anything out there with a lower cost. And that's really surprising with the domestic manufacturing, right? So it's not only that, but it's also made in America. And I think one of the ways that you're able to keep the cost down, especially today, are the lack of tariffs, right? So we're seeing tariffs come in from all over the world in these early months of 2025, and it's changing the cost structure of a lot of things, which is good for domestic manufacturers like yourself. How have you, I guess, what benefits have you seen beyond the benefit of no tariffs, which is sort of recent, to building out your products domestically, or making most of them in America?
Well, there's a lot of benefits. One thing that this is a misconception. Well, if you it comes from Asia, it's got to be cheaper. But there's been anti-dumping laws on aluminum and glass and other products for a long time, which really didn't traditionally make overseas aluminum any cheaper than domestic. Now, sometimes manufacturing, and sometimes if there's labor involved, it can be cheaper from overseas or Asia. But so the other thing that's nice about it is I can look at the product. For example, a vendor that buys something from Asia, it's going to be 10 to 12 weeks on the water, and then it's going to go to customs. And if that product just is no good, you're out. You're not getting new product for 3 months potentially. And so that's the part that's a little bit scary as well, is that I can look at this product, I can see it. It's like I said, it's being it's sourced locally. So I don't have those challenges or those issues. And like I said, the cost savings of going overseas, and right now, we're all nervous about tariffs, and we should be. They're up and down, and I assume this is all going to work out because it's beneficial to everyone if to find something fair and stable. But that's not as big of an impact on us right now as it would be for people that they're sourcing their railing overseas. And I would say most competitors, they're going overseas. So I think it's a huge advantage. And then just this feels good about supporting your own country. Country hopefully is job creation in our country. So it's got a measure of kind of feel good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned aluminum, so kind of the cost differences, et cetera. I want to dive in a little bit on the material itself. So what are the benefits of aluminum railings versus other materials that people might be looking at?
I think, particularly in do-it-yourself railing, aluminum, you're going to cut this stuff. The nice thing about aluminum is it doesn't rust. So with steel railing, there's steel panels, there's these steel systems. There's a certain amount of fabrication you have to do on the job site. You're going to cut these panels down. Once you cut that steel, it's has the potential to rust. And there's things you can do. You can prime it and touch it up. But steel's a little bit different. It's got veins, and it doesn't like the weather. So aluminum looks great. I promise you, go look at my railing 10 years and go look at a steel railing 10 years down the road. You're going to see a difference. Once rust, if you get any kind of, if steel rust and you get any kind of, that happening in the veins of the metal, all of a sudden the paint starts to bubble in different places. We've all seen that. For example, if you're in an area where they use salt on the roads, and I promise you bring that stuff home, you put it on your feet, you get snow, especially in commercial applications where you'll actually see, snow right up against the railing and things like that. Salt's in there as well from that, and it just wreaks havoc on that steel. So aluminum performs very well. It doesn't care about water. It doesn't care about the salt near as much as the steel does. We've got this stuff in coastal applications, been up for 20 years. I'll drive by stuff, go look at it. Still looks wonderful. And you're talking stuff that's 300 feet from the ocean, or even closer in some applications. So to me, that's the brilliant thing about aluminum. It's really a lifelong product. And the other thing is aluminum is very plentiful, and it's a very recycled material. So oftentimes aluminum railing it's recycled aluminum in many cases. So it's got a green element too.
Absolutely. So beyond obviously the benefits of aluminum itself, what are some other ways where Ridgeview Railing is better than the competition? So as people might be listening or watching this, or maybe checking out your website to think about buying railing for their home on a DIY fashion, what are some other advantages of Ridgeview Railing that you've developed versus some of the competition?
So this product, it's been around a long time, not necessarily on the internet a long time, but it's been around a long time, and it's commercial quality. And so what I mean is this railing material is strong enough to be on a 26th floor of a commercial building. And the higher you get up on buildings, architects and engineers get involved. They say, well, this railing's got to meet a certain wind load. So this stuff is on, it's on 26, 27 story buildings. It's that kind of quality. So you get commercial quality, but you got a residential price. You get a price that's affordable. And the other thing is the performance coating on it. If this product is going to go on a high-rise building, it's going to have to perform, right? We can't have paint falling off. We can't have it fading. And so we feel like our coatings are superior to our competitors. Again, our wall thickness, the strength of our product. We've done our internal testing. We've also got engineers that have tested this stuff out. We've paid companies to come in and test this stuff. Done destructive testing, and it outperforms nearly all our competitors.
And one other thing I'll add to it is the ease of installation, as I mentioned. So we went through and we videotaped or filmed the entire installation process with you out in Oregon, and put a little installation video, which you can see on the website, ridgeviewrailing.com. But it helped me to understand how easy this process is, relatively speaking. And some of the other competitors out there call it DIY, but it's very difficult. Or you're kind of left on your own. You've got instructions that were likely written overseas and may be confusing, but this is all done with the consumer in mind. And like I said, makes it easy, even for somebody like me that is not that handy, frankly. If somebody buys these kits, they call into your office, they get some advice on which ones to get, how many they need, et cetera, and get these shipped to their home. What tools do they need beyond, obviously, the kits themselves, the things that come in the boxes? I remember it's not very much, but what is needed in order to install your own railing?
It's fairly simple. Some of the skills you need, you got to be able to read a measuring tape. If you can read a measuring tape, if you have a drill and a driver, so a battery operated drill and a battery operated driver are great tools to install this. So if you can use those tools, if you can measure, a compound miter saw, you don't necessarily have to cut angles with our system, but that is a superior way to do it. I mean, guys could do it with a miter box and in just like a hacksaw, but a compound miter saw, which I promise, if you don't have one, your brother, your uncle, your best friend, your neighbor, your cousin has one.
Or Home Depot, you can rent them for a day even, right?
They exist. And so that's kind of it. Our instructions, I'm glad you brought up our instructions, John. We worked hard on those. I'm tired of opening up a package of something, usually something my wife's brought home and says, hey, put this together. Instructions you can tell, were translated poorly into English. I got to find glasses, to read the instructions. I don't like wearing glasses, but I got to find glasses, and they've got to be powerful ones. Our stuff has great pictures. I promise you could read without glasses. It's easy to follow. So we worked pretty hard on that. Matter of fact, our instructions were done by a drafter, and he worked hard on them, and we proofed them and said, nope, make this change. Let's do it like this. We worked hard on these things. So that part is really neat. Obviously they come with the kits. Plus we can answer questions to you. We're not going to hide from you and say, oh, you bought our railing, see ya. We can answer questions for you. We can walk you through things. I would think that, sometimes, railing is, you could say, well, maybe it's scary to buy online because, I got to ship it here and it's more than $19.99, right? But I will tell you, compared to what you can get at, at a local lumber yard or something, and the price point, we've got a better product, and we've got much higher quality.
And that support, I think, is so valuable. So if you obviously call, go through the chat, email, there's so many ways to contact you through the website to get questions answered before the purchase process. But it's so important that you can also contact afterwards with any questions you might have. And that's just not the case with most DIY competitors out there. You get home, you can't understand the instructions. It's hard to contact them, et cetera. It's a huge difference. And it is something that makes it doable for anybody, frankly, with any kind of minor skill set. Like you said, if you can read measuring tape, not everybody can do that, right? So if you're completely can't do anything, you can always hire a handyman to help out, et cetera. But if you've got any basic skills, this is something you can definitely figure out and do on your own. Well, Dave, this has been a lot of fun. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would be helpful for our audience?
No, I think your questions were great, John. I think you got to the important things. I think, just takeaways is that it's a great product. And we stand behind it. We believe in it. And if you're thinking about railing, even if you're not sure what you want to do, come chat with us, get a hold of us. I'd be happy to talk to you about it, maybe give you some ideas and give you my thoughts on things.
And I rarely do this, but I would say even reach out to me. If you're a listener, leave a comment, reach out to us at Harvest Growth with questions too. Like if you want to know somebody, kind of an unbiased opinion. I've been through this process with Dave, and man, the install was easy, and man, does it look beautiful. Check it out on the website. Go to ridgeviewrailing.com. You can see some before afters of what the railing looks like. You can see the kits, the contents, et cetera. It's pretty straightforward. But again, any questions you have, please reach out to them. And I do encourage everyone to listen. If you're driving, as always, I say, go to the show notes when you finish, right? So on YouTube and on harvestgrowthpodcast.com or any podcast platform, the show notes will have the URL that we've been talking about, ridgeviewrailing.com, and reach out with any questions that you might have. Also, I want to say thank you for tuning into today's episode where we uncover the stories and strategies behind some of the most successful product marketers and entrepreneurs out there. If you're looking to take your own business to the next level, be sure to visit perfectlaunch.com. You can grab a free copy of my book, The Perfect Launch System. It's packed with proven principles we've developed over the past 20 years, helping hundreds of businesses launch and grow successfully. Plus, you'll also get exclusive one-page summaries of some of our most popular podcast interviews, real-world insights you can apply right away. Head to perfectlaunch.com and start building your perfect launch today. Until next time, keep learning, keep launching, and keep growing.